Fort Meade, Maryland, 1978. Inside a secure windowless room, a man named Joseph McMonigle is lying on a cot. He is not a prisoner. He is a sergeant in the U.S. Army. An officer hands him a sealed envelope. Inside is a set of random geographic coordinates. The officer speaks one word: target. McMonigle doesn't look at a map. He doesn't look at a satellite photo. He simply closes his eyes and projects his mind halfway across the world. He starts drawing. He sketches a massive building. He draws a crane. He describes the smell of welding. 2 weeks later, a spy satellite passes over those exact coordinates in the Soviet Union. The photos come back. The building is there. The crane is there. The sergeant was right. Welcome to Shadowworks. Today we are opening the file on Project Stargate, the 20-year secret program where the U.S. government tried to turn witchcraft into a weapon. In the early 1970s, the CIA was in a panic, but not about nukes or tanks. They were panicking about magic. Intelligence reports claimed the Soviet Union was spending millions researching psychotronics, mind control, and telepathy. The CIA was terrified of a Psi-Gap. If the Soviets could read the president's mind, the war was over. So the U.S. decided to fight fire with fire. They didn't call it magic, though. They gave it a scientific name: remote viewing. The CIA contracted the Stanford Research Institute to test supposed psychics. 2 men stood out: Ingo Swann, an artist, and Pat Price, a retired police commissioner. The tests were simple. A scientist would hide an object in a box or drive to a random location. The viewer had to describe it. The results were disturbing. They weren't always right, but when they were right, they were impossibly accurate. The turning point came in 1974. The CIA gave Pat Price a set of coordinates for a secret Soviet R&D facility in Semipalatinsk. Price closed his eyes. He described a massive, peculiar sphere. He described people in lab coats. And then he described a giant crane specifically, a gantry crane with 4 legs. The CIA analysts laughed. They said, "We have photos of that base. There is no crane there." But Price insisted. "I am seeing a crane." 3 days later, new satellite photos arrived. The analysts went pale. Someone had moved a massive gantry crane out of a hangar. It had been hidden inside when the first photos were taken. Pat Price had seen through the roof. The CIA was convinced. They handed the program over to the Army. It was given a code name, Grill Flame, later renamed Stargate. For the next 2 years, the Army used remote viewers to hunt for everything from lost bombers to hostages in Iran. In 1979, Joseph McMonigle was asked to look at a blurry satellite photo of a building in Severodvinsk, Russia. It just looked like a factory. McMonigle focused. He said, "They are building something huge in there. A submarine, a catamaran hull. Twin decks." The National Security Council said he was crazy. A submarine that big was impossible. 4 months later, the Soviets launched the Typhoon class, the largest submarine ever built. It had a twin-hull design, exactly as McMonigle described. The generals were hooked. They started asking the psychics to look at everything: Mars, the future, the location of Colonel Gaddafi. But there was a problem. For every Typhoon submarine victory, there were 100 failures. Viewers would describe a missile silo, and the troops would find a windmill. They would see a hostage in a basement, but the hostage was actually on a plane. In 1995, the CIA finally ordered an independent review. The conclusion was brutal. Remote viewing was real enough to be statistically strange, but too unreliable to be used for war. They shut it down. After 20 years and $20 million, the U.S. government stopped paying people to stare at walls. Or, that's what they said they did. In the world of Shadowworks, programs rarely die. They just change names.